Hey guys, welcome to the channel. Thank you for stopping by. So today what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and take a look at the aftermarket sub that I installed in my 2019 Audi RS5 Sportback. Now this could be a similar setup for other Audi Sportback models, which would be the A5 and the S5 Sportback. And also some of the processes can be replicated in other models, like when it comes to the battery wiring and the placement of the aftermarket amplifier and things like that, along with a bass knob that I installed in the center console, because a lot of these models kind of have a similar setup, even though the sub may be located in a different place. But before I dive in, I would really appreciate it if you would hit the subscribe button, and at the end of the video, if you find this information useful, please go ahead and hit the like button. One thing that I do want to point out is that this is a overview of what I experienced during my install and some of the different gotchas to look out for, and some tips and tricks to make your installation a successful one and an easy one. As you guys can see, here's the aftermarket sub that I installed. I'm going to go ahead and leave all the links to the products in the description. So just go ahead and sit back and enjoy the video while I show you guys some of the behind the scenes things that I did for this install. All right, let's go ahead and talk about this baser box with the JL10. The reason I went with the JL10 is because I felt it was the best speaker for the baser box, meaning the cubic feet that's in the baser box and how it's going to sound, because it's not a ported box. I'm sure there's other subwoofers that will work, and you know, just make sure that you take a look at the specifications to make sure that it's going to be the right fit for this baser box, if the baser box is the route that you want to go. A few things that I do want to point out, a few gotchas to the baser box is, one of them, you could potentially have a phone box, which the baser box does have some instructions on how to relocate that, because without it, without relocating it, the baser box won't fit. There's actually a cubby in this behind the baser box in about this area right here towards the back, where the phone box can fit. What I did was I used some of the additional felt that they used for the packing material to wrap the phone box and kind of put it in the little cubby area. But what I made sure that I did was I made sure that these screws right here, there's a little screw hole right there. I don't know if you can see that right there. And then there's a screw hole right there. The shadow's kind of in the way right there. Sorry about that. Where if you don't keep the wires out of the way, the screws could potentially damage the wires if there's any rubbing or anything like that. So kind of be careful of that. Talking about the screws, this is the screw that I used right here. I'll put it down right there so you guys can see. It's a 3-inch wood metal type of a screw, and it's been working out perfectly. The box hasn't moved or shifted or anything like that, and I've had this installed probably for, I want to say, a good 4 months now. So that's a good screw to use. Like I said, it's a 3-inch and it should be sufficient enough. And what I did to make sure that the screw holes lined up to the metal beams that are in this section right here, and in this section right here, there's some metal beams right about there. So what I did was, with the baser box installed, I used like a pick type of a tool to go straight in and kind of make an indentation to make sure I knew where to drill the holes for the screws. And then once it was drilled, I did a test fit and it worked out perfectly. Another thing that I do want to point out is, if you choose to do a 12 volt turn on for your amp, you will need to tap in to a white wire that's connected to this plug right here. There's a brown wire and a white wire, and what I did was I went about 12 inches from the plug, so from the harness that plugs into this outlet here. So about 12 inches, then I use this tap to tap into it, where you'll see the wire that I ran along the cavity right here to go to the other side to the amp. One other gotcha that I do want to point out is, I'm really finicky about things like this, is I didn't want any silver screws, I wanted black screws, so I used some black screws for my speaker install. And what I also did was I saved some of the felt, and I basically cut a circle for the felt, and I basically stuck it in there so it kind of hides some of the it hides the screw that would be showing potentially, because these screws are kind of like a brass color, right? One other thing that I want to point out is actually the installation of the speaker in the baser box. You know, we all want the speaker to be straight, and with it being round, sometimes it can be a little bit of a challenge, you know, to get it lined up, right? So what I did was this. What I noticed was that this portion right here of the baser box is, you know, straight, meaning that it would be parallel to like if I were to position the speaker up against a door or something like that. And looking at it right now, it's straight as well. So what I did was I positioned the speaker against a straight edge like a door, and I kind of measured the distance from there to there, and then from there to down there, and and as long as those were accurate, this would be a straight line as well. So that's what I did, and it kind of turned out perfectly. So just a little tip and a trick right there for you guys when you guys are actually installing, you know, your speaker inside the baser box. Okay, so let's go ahead and talk about you know, how to route the wires coming from the baser box, which would be the speaker wires, and the 12 volt remote turn on for the amp to the amp. Now, I've seen a lot of people route the wires through this way right here, but I didn't want to do that because from past experience and from what I've read, you know, in a lot of stereo installations, you know, you want to try and avoid running any type of a signal wire, you know, along the same channel or crossing paths to a battery wire or anything like that. So I wanted to avoid that at all costs possible. And the way I was able to do that was I actually found that there's a small cavity, I shouldn't say small, but, you know, big enough to hold the wires in that area right there. And the way I found it was when I had the baser box removed and the previous cubby removed, I shined a flashlight in that area and I could see light coming down. So what I did was I used the coat hanger to find the path, and then once I got the coat hanger through, I kind of fed the wire through, and there's the wire right there. You can see that the wire has a wad there. The reason I put a wad there is because in case I need any extra wire to you know, pull the baser box out or anything like that, or if I need, you know, just for any reason, I just kind of left the wad there. And for point of reference, right now we are actually looking back towards the boot of the car. So I'm right now sitting inside the trunk area to kind of just film this for you guys. So from there, with where the water wires are, I ran it underneath this channel right there. So right along there, and the wires are kind of positioned underneath those clips right there. So there's that one clip there and that one other clip right there. I didn't remove the clips or anything like that. I just kind of positioned them underneath, and then once it got in that little valley right there where it's kind of looking like it's curved up, I just kind of you know, stuck the wires underneath there. It hasn't rattled or anything, nor did I put any felt around the wires or anything like that. They've been pretty secure, so it's kind of just the bare wires just clipped up, and they're not rattling or anything. So until I hear anything, you know, I'm just going to leave them as is. Okay, so once you've gotten to this point, you kind of want to take a step back before you run the speaker wire and the 12 volt wire to the to this other side, to this through this cavity right here, because it's a similar situation, right? To feed the wire through with a coat hanger. But again, there's limited space there, and I didn't want to run it through the through this channel right here, just for the same reasons why I didn't want to run it through that channel on the other side there. So what you want to do is, for now, go ahead and set the speaker wire and the 12-volt wire aside. Just make sure that the leads are taped off, especially on the 12-volt wire. There shouldn't be any power going through it, but just in case. And what you want to do is you kind of want to drive your focus to the signal wire for the amplifier, meaning the source wire where the music is going to play through. And what you're going to do is you're going to figure out a way to get signal from this harness right here. So this right here is originally plugged into that right there, which is the OEM subwoofer in my Sportback. Now again, if you have an A4 or an S4, it's a little bit different because it's in the rear deck, but kind of the same concept, but it'll be run differently. So what I did to get signal from my the plug that was going into my OEM subwoofer is I actually made a harness which is completely plug and play. So what this means is I don't have to tap into any wires because these wires are pretty thin. I didn't want to mess with them or do the T-tap or anything like that because I didn't want to damage them and then have to repair, figure out a way to repair it or anything like that. And if I ever need to, I want to go back to OEM setup, if I ever want to sell the car or anything like that. So like I was saying, I made a harness here. So on one end, it has a plug that plugs directly into the OEM plug. And on the other end is a female RCA, and the way I have it connected to my amplifier is a male to male RCA, and again it's fed through this channel right here. So going into this bay right here where the amplifier and everything is, which you guys will see in a moment here. So the reason I said set aside the speaker wire and the 12-volt wire is because you want to feed the RCA wires first. And what I recommend doing is feeding downwards through the coat hanger. So first feed the coat hanger down, RCA wire through the channel there. You may need to do one at a time, and I'll go ahead and link the one that I used in the description below, just so you guys will know that it can be done. So in this cavity, I have the RCA wire and the speaker wire and the 12-volt wire going through there, and it's kind of watered up just so it's kind of clean and nice and kind of secure. I also have some foam wrapped right there just so there isn't any kind of rattle or anything like that. But like I said, I've had this for 4 months and I haven't heard any rattles or anything like that. All right, so here is the area where the amplifier is mounted. I have the cover removed and I undid some wires already so we can kind of go through what those wires are. So right here, there is the speaker wire that's being fed through the cavity that I mentioned right in that area. There's the 12-volt remote turn on, and there's the RCA wire. And so this RCA wire, as I mentioned, it's a male to male. So what happens is that it gets plugged in to the harness that I mentioned earlier that I made, and then it goes through the cavity, comes in right here, and then it gets plugged in through a female type of a harness that comes with the amplifier, which is mounted right there. Okay, so I went ahead and cleaned up the wires, and let's go ahead and talk about the amplifier, and we'll kind of get into the how I mounted the amplifier. The reason I have the amplifier mounted like this, and you could have it mounted whichever way you want, it really doesn't affect the functionality of the amplifier, but there's a couple of reasons why I mounted it like this. The number one reason, I wanted to have access to these dials in case I ever want to change it or anything like that. I didn't want to have to undo any zip ties or undo any clips or anything like that to have access to these dials. Another reason is there's a platform right above there, and I didn't want it to hit up above you know, while I was driving or anything like that and create some kind of a rattle. I don't know if you guys can see that, it's kind of dark, but I made sure that I didn't do that. And the way I did that was, you know, I zip tied it to this original platform that was already there. I did have to drill some holes, so there's holes there that I drilled right here, and then I drilled one hole back over there. I'll try and take some pictures so you guys can see that a little bit better and post it on the forum post that I have for this setup, but that's how I mounted the amplifier. Okay, so still on the topic of the amplifier, let's go ahead and talk about some of the terminals that are on the other side of the amplifier, right, you know, right back there. You know, there's the speaker terminals, there's the 12-volt terminal, there's the negative terminal, and there's the positive wire terminal, which is the power source. The speaker terminal and 12-volt terminal, as I mentioned, those are the wires that are going to come in through the valley right here. That should be pretty self-explanatory. Go ahead and, you know, plug that in, positive to positive, negative to negative, whatever you have set on your speaker. And then same thing with the 12-volt turn on. If you choose to go that route, I chose that route. Now with this amplifier, you can do the remote turn on using the left source, but I chose not to go that route because it does tend to make a thump noise, and I believe it's the left source. Definitely take a look at the directions on that, but I strongly urge you guys to use the 12-volt turn on, because that's a much cleaner method than using the remote turn on method, because like I said, it does create a thump. So next, let's go ahead and talk about the negative source. Now, the wire that came with my amplifier kit unfortunately wasn't long enough to go towards the 12 volts, I'm sorry, the negative source that's grounded to the that's grounded next to the battery. So what I did was I actually created my own ground source, which is right there. So what I did was I basically drilled a hole. You know, I stripped off the paint there using some fine sandpaper, and then you know, I just kind of used a bolt to you know, mount that. And then once I had it mounted, I just ran the wire through down here all the way through here, and then going back through there to the back of the amplifier. Obviously I had the amplifier removed from that area there, zip tied, so that I could do everything. So now let's go and talk about the power wire going to the amplifier. So the way I did the power wire was, so here's the power wire right there. As you guys can see, it's going back to the amplifier where it's plugged into the appropriate terminal. And the way I ran the power wire was, there's a little valley right here where it has all these wires that go into the fuse area that you guys can see. So I kind of use that existing valley. So there's the amplifier wire right there. It goes to the fuse block, which is right down there. Okay, so there's a better shot of the fuse block. I apologize, in the previous shot it was a little bit dark, so I moved the light around. So once the wire comes out from the cavity area right there, it goes down into the fuse block. Obviously, you know, when you're working on the fuse and wiring that up, you know, you want to make sure that the fuse isn't plugged in or anything like that. And from there, after the fuse, it goes into the battery. And the way I mounted it into the battery was I undid that screw right there, and I put in the I terminal, and I put the screw in, and then I needed the wire to fit. So what I did was I actually cut a slit right there in the plastic so that the wire could fit in this little area right there without any bulge or anything like that, so the covers would go back on appropriately. Right now the covers pushed back, just so you guys can kind of see what that looks like. One other thing that I do want to point out is when you're running the wire, it's best to kind of undo these bolts right there, just so it's easier to lift up and you can kind of see the wire going through. It'll make your life easier if you undo that one right there and that one right there. Couple of other things that I want to point out before I get into the optional bass knob wiring, which is that wire right here. So if you didn't do that, then this pretty much wraps up your installation. And a couple of other things that I wanted to point out is when you mount or when you secure this power wire, you want to make sure that it sits below this original wire right here, because you don't want that wire to rub on the spare tire that sits in this wheel well. So I made sure I did that. As you can see, there's no issues with mine right there or anything like that, and plus the spare tire really doesn't move that much, but just in case. And there's that other ground that I mentioned that you could potentially tap into if your ground wire that came with your kit is long enough to reach all the way to this point from the amplifier. All right, so next we'll go ahead and get into the running of the bass knob. All right, guys, so here's the bass knob right here. I'm going to go ahead and start the instructions or the directions from this end, because you're going to have some excess wire left over, and it's better to have the excess wire towards the amplifier. So I strongly urge you guys to start the installation process from this end versus from the amplifier end. But to mount the bass knob, all that I did was I used some double-sided tape and mounted it right here. Now, I mounted it to a certain height because I wanted to have it access when I have the lid down and slid back. You know, I can still access it, and even when it's slid forward, I can still access it using my right hand. Right now, obviously, I can't use my right hand because I'm filming, but it's completely accessible, and it's accessible even more so when it's back like this. So to install the wiring for the bass knob, what I did was I went ahead and removed the original, I guess, rubber pad that was there. And, you know, I kind of looked at this area right here, and I discovered that this hole right here, the slit, goes actually down and into that area right there on the other side of the console there. So we'll get into that here in a second, but what I did was I went ahead and drilled a hole big enough so that I could feed the wire down, the original wire down. So a better view from back here. So obviously, you know, you're not going to have the wire going through there at first. You know, you're going to want to make the hole a little bit bigger, just so that it's big enough to have the other end of the wire that's plugged into the amplifier be able to be fed through. That side is a straight side, so you know there isn't any angles or anything like that to mess with. And what you're going to want to do is, once you have the hole drilled big enough, take a coat hanger and feed it down through. So once you feed it down through, it's going to come out to the other side of this console, so this side right here. And I'll show you guys that here in a second. Let me go ahead and shine some light there. All right, so for demonstration purposes, I actually went ahead and found the coat hanger that I used for my entire installation. Now, this is the same coat hanger piece that I cut off for the running of the wire in the back in the low cavity areas, and for the bass knob wiring right here. So as you guys can see, I have the coat hanger sitting there in the hole, and there it is right there. It's moving up and down. So as you can see, you know, you can feed down through that hole that you drill down to the bottom. And what you're going to want to do is feed the wire from the top going down. Don't tape the plug to the coat hanger. Do a little loop and then pull it through. That should pull through fine, and you shouldn't damage the wire. Just be gentle with it. And once you have the wire down, what you're going to want to do is pull the wire all the way through, and then route it underneath into this area right here until you kind of get towards the middle of the seat. And I'll kind of show you what that's going to look like from underneath here in a second. Okay, so once you have all the wire pulled through, it's going to come out like right about in this area right here. You're going to have a ton of wire just sitting right here. And what you're going to want to do is initially just route the wire underneath through this valley right there and pull it through about that vicinity right there. So there's the wire right there, right? So about right there. So it's maybe like I want to say maybe 10 inches or about a foot from the back here. And then once you have it routed and you pull through, just kind of set it aside for right now, and then just go ahead and tuck the wire underneath. That's all you'll do. There's really nothing else to do with the wire, and you want to tuck it in as far up as you can go until the seat gets in the way, because you're going to want to have the seat pulled up forward all the way. And then once you get to this side, you're going to want to route the wire behind this area right here. I have it just clipped in there underneath this little plastic piece right there. And you're going to want to feed it through this area right here. I'm showing the light a little bit better for you guys. And then just feed it up right here. So that is the only part of the wire that's exposed from where when the seat is pushed back. Other than that, there's no other wire that's exposed. And what I did was I went ahead and wrapped this in some felt tape, some black felt tape, just so you can see the gray of the wire, just so it kind of blends in and it doesn't look kind of out of place. But honestly, you can't even notice it. So once you have the wire going up into that little area right there that's exposed, you're going to continue to tuck the wire underneath these panels right here until you get to the back part of the seat. And then you're going to simply lift up the seat a little bit here by unclipping it. And then the next piece, you're going to go behind the seat back, which I'll get to here in a second once I pull the seat down. Okay, so once you have the wire fed in through the side here going to the back, it's going to come out in this vicinity right there. So you guys can kind of see that little spot right there. That's the wire for the bass knob that I have tucked in underneath this carpeted area. So you're going to continue to tuck underneath this plastic piece. As you can see, it's right there again. There's the wire. And then you're going to continue to go all the way to this corner right about there. And then once you get to that corner, you're going to want to tuck it underneath that carpet area. I will say it's not the easiest thing to do, but it is doable. But again, take your time so you don't damage the wire or anything like that. And you're going to continue to tuck underneath there until you get to the area where you fed the power wire through, and you're going to feed it through the same channel, and that's the wire right there that's bundled up. Okay, so here's a better view of the wire for the bass knob. So this is the wire that was fed from the front going to the back, and there's the bundle right there that I was speaking of earlier. Now I will point out this isn't the wire that came with the amplifier. I did buy this separately because the wire that came with the amplifier didn't have a right angle, and I wanted one that was a right angle for the front there so that the bass knob wouldn't sit up so high. So I will leave a link to this wire and everything, as I mentioned, in the description below, just so you guys can kind of have a reference of the different things that I bought. Alright guys, so that pretty much wraps it up. I hope this video was useful to you guys, and you guys got a lot of different tips and tricks to install your aftermarket subwoofer in the same format that I have mine installed. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave a comment in the comment section. I'll also go ahead and put my email address in the description below, so if you guys need a harness or if you guys have any questions, you could email me directly. And again, if you found this video useful, please go ahead and hit the thumbs up button, and don't forget to subscribe. Thank you and have a great day.